Welcome back to another episode of the Win with Dice podcast, a podcast featuring members of the Win with Dice team. I'm Calvin, and this week we have on a special guest who's kind of a regular here at this point, Tim.
Hi guys.
The Win with Dice podcast, for people who may not know, is a podcast all about tabletop RPGs. We talk about running them and playing them, and all the awesome people we get to play games with, or who make these games that we get to have on for episodes here and there. So, previous episode was the start of a sort of Pathfinder 2e, Starfinder 2e crossover game. This week is going to be sort of a recap of the conclusion session of that game, and some things that went well, some things that didn't necessarily go well. We will talk about that recap. It's not going to be the actual play of the episode. That'll be edited and it'll be up on the YouTube channel later down the line. But we're going to talk about that game and just some of the events of it. But before we get into all that, we have to get to the most important part of the show, the Win with Dice weekly GM tip of the week. And this week, the tip is brought to us by Tim.
Yes, so this week your tip is, if a player is new to the system you're using and they tell you they've completed their character sheet, it's all good, ready to go, and maybe you should check it over to make sure that's actually true. So I've introduced some people to Pathfinder recently, some of them were new players, and we had a session 0 to kind of go over the whole character creation setup. Only one of them has ever played TTRPGs before, so for 3 of them, completely brand new, and for the 4th one, they are very, very familiar with D&D regular player. And so, you know, we're going over the similarities, they're making the character. So then when they tell me that they're going through the app at the same time as everyone else and that they're all set up and that they're happy with it, I made the mistake of trusting that that was okay and not checking it over, because it turns out what had happened was they'd skipped all of the skill training. So they'd done the regular character setup but not trained in anything whatsoever, which absolutely became a problem further down the line. So yeah, just because a player's confident in one system, you still need to help make sure that they're on track for whatever it is that if they're going to be playing it with you from scratch.
Yeah, because it's easy to miss certain things when you're building a character. I find equipment especially, at least for me, that's something that I tend to miss even in Pathfinder still. So yeah, just doing that double check, making sure everybody's on the same page, at the same level, making sure things are functioning as they should, because, you want people to experience the game as intended. You don't want them to have numbers that are too low that they can't actually help out their team when they're doing something. But yeah, no, I think that's good advice, just to do that quick double check, just to make sure the player has everything that they need for the game. Is there anything else you want to add to that?
I think that's the main bulk of it, but if you do start to suspect mid-game that things aren't set up, do feel free to take a pause and, check through with your player that things are alright. There's a difference between rolling badly and recurringly rolling really badly, and that might be a sign that something's maybe not set up rather than just bad dice rolls.
Yeah, I think adding on to that, I think, just pausing in the middle of the game to make sure everybody's good, everything's working properly is usually a good idea. As a GM, you don't have to feel like you need to keep things flowing if something is obviously wrong. If you need to take that break, that pause, and just figure out why something isn't working, then you just, present that to the players and make sure everybody's comfortable, and then you're able to all get the ball rolling again at the same pace.
Cool. And with that out of the way, let's get on into the show.
All right. So, as people would have noticed a couple of weeks ago, the previous episode 222, we did what we only talked about, what we only dreamed of, is having a session of a game that was a combination of Pathfinder 2nd Edition and Starfinder 2nd Edition. And we will get into the actual recap of that. Essentially, the plan was to split that up into 2 episodes. The first one being sort of an introduction, and the next one being a combat session. The combat session itself had a few... I'll admit, it had a few issues with it. I wasn't super happy with how it was turning out, and I didn't really want to put it out as an episode. I think maybe as a YouTube video, it's okay just for people who want to see the full detail on it. But it wasn't turning out great episode-wise and session-wise, if I'm being honest. So I kind of wanted to talk about that, get into why I felt that way, what I thought did work, and what didn't really work, and what I would have changed with maybe a bit more hindsight or a bit more foresight, I guess I should say, before the game.
Yeah, I think the game was an absolutely great concept. The storyline was, I loved it, but there were problems, and I think it would be better for people to hear how that works out and what they can think of or learn from that for their own games.
Yeah. Because, like, we've talked about a lot of sessions. We've recapped a lot of sessions, and generally it's sessions that have turned out pretty well and that we had fun with. I don't know that we've talked a whole lot about, like, sessions that didn't turn out so well. So I feel like that's kind of a thing that's worth talking about. And, you know, at least in this way, I don't feel as bad about it, because now it's just a topic of discussion and not me just putting out something
bad about it. You were just very, very excitable and overly ambitious.
Yeah, but, you know, it's like you and I know because we were there, but presenting it to someone else or an audience of people,
Sure.
They're not gonna know. So this is my way of making myself feel better about it for when I actually do manage to finish that edit. I think it'll be easier for me emotionally now. But enough stalling, let's get into the recap of this session. So the first part that people would have seen last week, or last episode I should say, it started off with essentially 2 different one-shot session stories occurring at similar times or within the same session. So on one side we had a Pathfinder character, a half-orc monk by the name of Levi, who had been hired as security/protection for an elven druid Cassiel, who was exploring in the Verduran forest. Cassiel had claimed that she was doing, like, nature studies, but eventually revealed that she was on the lookout for a missing friend of hers, Darlia, a halfling, who had recently had her spider sanctuary home destroyed by the Lumper Consortium. Darlia had turned vengeful, and she had apparently made contact with some sort of power that Cass didn't understand, but she was worried for her friend, wanted to track her down. So Levi and Cass were on this journey for a bit. They had to do some exploration. They had to deal with some traps in a cave. But they eventually found Darlia and her giant spider pet, Spindra. And they could see that Darlia had apparently found an elf gate and had hooked up some sort of alchemical equipment to it and was using her sort of natural druidic knowledge, bridging that gap between alchemy and druidicism, to apparently have some sort of effect on this elf gate. They did try to talk Darlia down, and it seemed like it might have gotten through, but within this cave chamber, there were some glowing mushrooms within the middle of it, and something about them activated and apparently took control of Darlia's mind. There was a glow in her eyes as she activated something on the alchemy set, some chemicals started boiling, and it caused the elf gate to activate and shoot a beam of energy out that divided the room that everyone was in. Elsewhile, within the Bulwarks region of the planet Castrovel, Eklek, a Skittermander witchwarper, was hired by Koskaru, a Sharon operative who worked for the stewards. Koskaru was investigating an elven businesswoman by the name of Lucia, who was under suspicion from Abadar Corps, which she worked for, after a series of strange purchases and business moves, and other auditors and financial investigators had gone missing after looking into them. Analysis on Lucia's computers revealed the sort of multi-dimensional energy research she was doing, so Koskaru called in an expert, Eklek, who, being a witch warper, knows his way around the multiverse, or at least has knowledge of it. The two of them did some research, some investigating, and found a lab that Lucia was using. The original staff of that lab was now missing, and the security had been replaced by several robots. After some infiltration past a laser grid, Eklek and Koskaru came across Lucia within a large laboratory, and within that laboratory was an elf gate that had been connected to this large computer console. Lucia activated her security robots. She claimed that something outside the universe had offered her power, and she would soon get what she deserved. She activated the computers, it activated the gate, and it created this beam that split the room in half. And because these things were sort of happening simultaneously, just at different points in time or different universes or whatever they may be to the people existing in these spaces,
I don't think that's what simultaneous means.
Not really. I mean, we can talk about this part of the concept. I was going to save more of this for the end, but I did want to talk about why I set this situation up this way.
Oh no, it was fun. Don't get me wrong. I was just being pedantic.
Oh no, that's I get it. Because I wanted to talk about like why I went with this as the Pathfinder Starfinder crossover, because I was kind of treating them as like different universes, even though technically they're different points in time. Although it could be seen that way, I feel like I was sort of leaning more towards it being a multiversal thing than a time travel thing.
It's your game, man. You do what you want with it.
That is reason number one, to be fair. But yeah, I kind of wanted something that was like a blend of the two, because there were other ideas that I had after, certainly after this one, but they kind of leaned more into like bringing extra magic into Starfinder or bringing extra tech into Pathfinder. So I kind of wanted something that was like an actual blend of the two, which again, thankfully it's my own thing, so I don't have to worry about canon or whatever.
Well, exactly. And if I can have cowboy dimension in my games,
Yeah.
I think it's totally fair for you to, you to have space and fantasy as different realms rather than just the future.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I wanted it to feel like two things coming together instead of like putting peanut butter and chocolate, So yeah, the two rooms, they ended up sort of merging together in this map that was half cave, half futuristic laboratory. I still like the map. I feel like the map turned out really well.
The map was lovely.
Yeah, I think that was, if anything else, that was my favorite part. Because I used GIMP for that, the photo editing program.
Mm.
And I think it turned out pretty well for something that wasn't specifically made for creating maps in. This is probably weird, but it was the tiling on the floor and like the texture of the cave floor and how that turned out really well that I was pretty happy with. It's a very small detail, but I don't know. It was a lot for me.
Well, you put a lot of effort into it, and it came out real nice, and you've also now got a really cool map that you can use whenever you want.
Yeah, absolutely. And I do need to put that on the website so other people can, if they want to use it for something, I'm sure someone can find like their own use for it in their own games. But yeah, so essentially the battle map was a split between the cave and the lab. And as this split happened, the sort of fungal tentacles reached out from within the now blended elf gates, reaching into Lucia and Darlia, taking control of them, and they ended up speaking with the same deep voice, the voice of a being named Myceliax, who claimed it would soon consume both universes. Myceliax, of course, just me doing a Reaper voice from Mass Effect.
I did not work that out. Okay.
Like, the first thing it said was, like, I am assuming direct control.
I should get.
So yeah, essentially what the players then had to deal with was shutting down the portals while being in combat. Darlia on one end, Lucia on the other, or one side, I should say. And I did make a round-by-round recap. We can get into like little bits of that, but I think it might help us to talk about how things went.
Yes.
Eklek and Levi, they did have a moment where they looked at each other and quickly agreed they had shared enemies, so we rolled into combat. So to set the scene here, the way I had this set up was that in the Pathfinder side within the cave, while the rooms had a similar shape, they had different problems in front of the mini-bosses the players had to deal with. So for Darlia, there was a giant spider and several web traps between the players and her and the gate itself. And then for Lucia, there were 2 security robots, like a laser turret trap, and then Lucia herself. And I think the main thing, like as we get into it, like the bots move in, the spider moves in, but there's a ton of turns for everything. Like even the laser turret, it should have had a turn, and I think I forgot that for the first round or two. Because it was a complex trap, so it should have had a turn as well. So I had, like, I'd have to check my notes again, but I had a bunch of things in play. I had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, like 11 characters in play, essentially. Including, one that came up later that we can also talk about. And I think that was certainly one of the things that started making the session feel like it was dragging out, because this eventually ended up like 5 rounds of combat. And a lot of that was spent on these 2 security bots and the giant spider and the laser turret as well. And it was kind of maybe a bit too much.
It was.
Definitely.
No maybe. It was a bit too much.
Yeah.
It wasn't the severity of the combat as such, as it was the sheer amount of time it took to complete a round.
Mm-hmm.
And I think for a normal game, that wouldn't have been too bad. But for a podcast episode, short game, it made things take too long.
Yeah, especially considering, because I did have, like, these NPC companions that were with the players, but I had both of you controlling 2 characters, essentially, just so I could balance around 4 player characters, because I felt pretty limited by trying to balance around 2 player characters. Although, in retrospect, that might have helped, but, either way.
don't think there were any problems with me and Ramon doing 2 characters each. I think that aspect of it was fine.
I think like the limitation might have helped, but I needed you guys to have something to play off of in your own individual sides before we mixed. So that helped, but a lot of it was just, I was kind of like, I felt like I couldn't do too much with 2-player characters. I didn't have a lot of XP to work with to build a combat.
Yeah.
But also, I guess the way I had structured it, it kind of was like it was essentially each individual thing could have been an okay one-shot on its own. Like, it had an introduction, it had a skill challenge, it had a trap to get around, and then a combat. And if it was just, either 2 characters against, here's some webs and a giant spider, or here's a handful of security robots and a laser turret, that could have been okay on its own. But kind of putting together, again, like, it just sort of overloaded the combat with a bunch of turns, and that really slowed down the pace of something that should have been moving a lot faster. In addition, I didn't get to put enough focus onto Darlia and Lucia, who I did sort of have like different abilities for. And I did want to talk about this a bit because I kind of liked them. Lucia was essentially a reskinned Aeon Guard soldier with some changes. The coordinated fire ability of the Guard soldier, I renamed it to Corporate Synergy. And the Show No Mercy ability, I renamed to Just Business. Because, it fit her character. And this is something I do a lot, is I will take a character that I like, especially in Foundry, where it's so easy to just search through a bunch of NPCs. I will take something I like and then take some abilities from it, and then, slap a different name on it if I have to. And then I have a character that I know is, like, perfectly statted for that level, and that I can do some fun stuff with. Darlia was a bit more complex because she was a mix of 2 different halfling characters whose sheets were available in Foundry. To be specific for people who might know, and actually Tim, you might be aware of, she is a mix of Kip the Druid from Pathfinder Society Scenario 114 and a character named Verilyn Erridge from Adventure Path 176.
Oh, I've not come across either of those yet.
Ooh, okay, well then, I will try to
No spoilers, don't worry.
But essentially, Kip the Druid is very obviously a druid. So she uses Kip's stats and spells, but the character Verilyn had a really interesting support ability. So I took that and I renamed it with like spider-themed names, because that was sort of where the character was going with her giant spider companion. So she basically had these support abilities, one of them that she could use for initiative checks, and one that she could use for bonuses to attack and damage rolls in combat, but she needed an action to set it up. And actually for that, I had to figure out how to set up custom effects in Foundry, but I did figure that out, so that's useful. That's good for future Calvin. But the problem, though, is that, they had these abilities, they had these things that would be good for supporting each other, because Lucia could help to suppress enemies, and Darlia could help to give bonuses to attack rolls. But they didn't really get to use them that much, because there was other stuff in the middle that was kind of largely getting in the way. Especially when we got into a situation where another creature spawned into the combat. Because as the players were moving through the combat, like, you guys had also started doing damage to the mushrooms in the middle of the room. And in that time, I had essentially a skill challenge going on that I was keeping track of. I was just counting victory points, basically. I set the difficulty for the level of your characters. You were level 4. So I just set the DC based on that. And anytime someone was doing damage, I would count that as a victory point in this skill challenge. And I kind of feel like I should have made that a bit clearer or a bit more obvious, that that was something you were trying to achieve within the space of this combat, because then there could have been more focus on it as well, instead of being kind of spread out.
Yeah, I definitely didn't realize that was the goal.
Like, I don't think I made that clear until, like, maybe the 3rd round. And that was just another thing of just, I think that might have just been more of a communication thing on my part. I should have just been like, your goal here is to shut down the gate, not necessarily get into combat. But because the gate was open in round 4, I think it was, an avatar of this creature. Oh, by the way, the evil fungus thing was named Myceliax, of course, after the mycelium of a fungus. And it said, oh god, what did it say when it spawned at the beginning of the game?
Something about having like be eaten 100 worlds, and it's gonna try and like eat both of our worlds at the same time.
Yeah, it was surprised that as this was happening, like there were two worlds being consumed at the same time, but it was kind of like, well, I'm gonna do this anyways, but this is new. But it did say that because I was looking up stuff about funguses. So it called itself, they said, like, I am myceliax, the fungal overlord, the ever-growing HiFi, dikaryotic doom of 100 universes. I hope dikaryotic is the right term and not monokaryotic, but that's just me spending a bit of time on Wikipedia. Don't call me out, please.
The last podcast session, I did say my bets were on it being that the mushrooms are evil, and it was a mushroom guy from another dimension, so I'm giving myself half a point.
Well-deserved point. I mean, I don't know. I do like a big villain speech, an overconfident guy with a bunch of titles.
Yeah.
There was that one wyvern from the Crown of Dragons campaign from a while back. You know, every villain needs their titles. But yeah, this avatar of myceliax emerges, and I had described it as just like, you know, something poking if someone pokes their finger into water, what it looks like from the perspective under the water, basically, as this avatar was poking through. And as the players were going through, they did, like, you two, Ramon and Tim, for people who, I don't know why you're watching this if you didn't see the first one. As you're going through the combat here, you did manage to get enough points to shut down the portal. It was like 5 victory points. It probably could have been lower, but I think 5 is, I don't think that was the problem. I think 5 is probably okay. Like, if you knew about it, 5 would be okay.
Yeah. Because
that's, with 4 player characters, essentially, that's maybe 2 rounds, maybe 3 if you're really unlucky.
Yeah, I mean, if we'd both clocked on, I mean, Ramon pretty much did, because he was like running straight towards the gate trying to shut it down, and I was like, oh, I need to take out all these tiny little chumps on the way, and that slowed things down a lot as well. So that was me not fully getting the memo.
Yeah, but like, in fairness, I did put them there, and I didn't say what you should have been doing, so...
Yeah.
Like, that was a reasonable conclusion from what was presented to you, I think.
Yeah, but you know, when you've got like your players who aren't playing in the same way, you can't necessarily come up with a good team plan, as it were. Whereas, you know, maybe if I was on the same page as Ramon, I could have, you know, done something better to assist. Whereas it ends up him just getting wailed on by like everything at once, and me just taking a very slow time to not do that.
But I think like that could have been avoided, or that could have been solved if I had, because I did want the...
Oh, sure. I just meant like there's not one reason why it didn't work. It was like, you know, there were the issues with the game itself, but then it didn't help that I made a suboptimal decision at that point as well.
I mean, I don't know. I feel like the decision you made makes sense. Like, I don't think it's only suboptimal. It made sense at the time,
but it was definitely, yeah, in hindsight, could have done things different.
Yeah, but I don't know. I think, like, because thinking about it, I shouldn't have treated the combat like mixing 2 things together. I should have treated it like one large one. Because, again, the way I treated it was just like, you know, you have a giant spider and a mini boss of a certain level on one side. You have the 2 security bots and the laser turret and the mini boss of a certain level on the other side. I should have just treated this as a single combat for 4 player characters. Let Lucia and Darlia and this avatar be like the main focus of it, and maybe have some hazards. Like, maybe treat the giant spider as a hazard and have some web traps around just to mix up like movement on the map. And I don't know, maybe not the laser turret because it would require a turn, but like some sort of laser trap or something, just to again mix up like movement in that space, just so you don't have to like, so you're not, you know, walking in a straight line towards the enemy. You have to consider where you're moving and things like that. And then again, have the much larger creature in the middle, probably change up its stats slightly. I'd have to look at the math to see where everything would end up statting out if I did that. But, you know, just being able to focus on those 3 more unique characters, the ones that I did different stuff for, because the avatar creature, the myceliax avatar, it is based on a myceloid, an existing creature, but I just made some changes to how its poison thing works, which didn't really come up much, because the only person who got hit by it was Koskaru, I think. and Koskuru was just knocking out those fortitude saves. So it wasn't too huge a deal. But it could have been if it showed up earlier and it was the main focus of that fight. Because then Lucia and Darlia, with their support abilities, they could have been supporting it while being capable of doing damage on their own. Because Lucia had that arc rifle and Darlia had like these claws she could summon, which did need higher damage. But that's just, I don't know, she had spells, so it's fine. The claws weren't really that useful. But yeah, once we got towards the end of it then, the energy kind of was not there. And I just dropped this new guy with a bunch of HP in like the 4th round after the previous 3 of just sort of like slowly moving through this thing. And then as Ramon had pointed out afterwards, and he was sort of correct on this, like I should have let the closure of the portal be the end of it and have that guy like pulled back into the portal or whatever. And with some big dramatic villain moment as he does so. But I think in my head at the moment, I was like, okay, they've used their skills to shut down the gate, but I still need to have like an actual fight here because, you know, this has to be entertaining as a thing to watch. And I think that was sort of another issue going on at the time, is I was kind of caught up in making sure this was a really cool set piece or whatever. Because I was sort of like, I was expecting there to be an audience for this, right? Just because, you know, I hadn't seen other actual plays of Pathfinder mixed with Starfinder, well, specifically 2nd edition I hadn't seen. So I was kind of expecting, you know, people are going to be seeing this, they're going to want to see like a cool combat or something, they're going to want to see like a cool map, a cool encounter. So the player shutting down the portal with just these skill checks, I mean, that's great, but is this entertaining enough? I don't know. So yeah, the portal's down, but this guy's still here, so you still have to deal with that.
Yeah, and I think that mindset was really what led to the number of problems going wrong, because you're thinking, I want to show this off to people because it's not really been seen how, like, we've known for the last year or so that Starfinder 2e is going to be fully compatible with Pathfinder 2e. So of course they're like, well, people aren't doing demos of this yet or their own playthroughs, we're going to be the first on the scene to do it, let's make it big, let's make it bold. But it's also like roughly an hour podcast, and we need the playtime to be able to fit into that. So you fit so many different cool things in to try and demonstrate this is all the great stuff you can do with it, which would be great if we had like 4 hours to do it. But for the time we had and for the skill levels, it ended up being a bit too much of everything.
Yeah.
But that's not to say that it's like it was bad, and the concepts are there, all of the different elements are there, and I think this could be reworked either as it is or for something in the future. I mean, we didn't kill my Celiax. Bring him back. Let's do this again. You know?
I mean, yeah, you didn't. I have had thoughts about my celiacs, to be honest. I was just watching like an unrelated YouTube video, and it brought up like certain stuff about how fungus works, and I was like, ooh, just gonna put that in the memory bank for later.
Well, yeah, I think this has got like so much usefulness behind it, and I mean, I know I've said before, like, I want to do some like Cowboys versus Aliens kind of game where, you know, you just put roaming around your little fantasy world and then aliens just pop down in the UFO. I think that would be great using Starfinder in this, and the plot that you came up with was just a fantastic way of crossing the different systems over. So yeah, I learn from what we've done, let's bring it back some point down the line. My Celiax is back and is like, you you got rid of me once, mortals, but I'm back again to destroy your world, and I don't know, man.
Yeah,
maybe it turns up in the mushroom soup that they're eating.
The soup's actually a portal.
Yeah. You swirled your spoon 3 times and that activated the portal.
Oh no. Yeah, that's the thing. I feel like when I was just like sitting, I mean, also like sitting by myself with it and just trying to edit this thing over the course of like 2 weeks and having to sit through over 2 hours of footage of something that I knew could be better. Because it's not just that it didn't work out or that it was bad or anything like that. It's that I knew it could be better and I knew how to fix it. But then I'm looking at this like, now I'm going to put this in front of people and people are going to watch it. And they're not going to have me sitting there saying, I know what went wrong. They're not going to have me sitting there be like, I know what I could have done. This is, you know, you can watch it if you want, but I know what the problems are here. And just that thought was making it super hard to edit this. Just, a peek at the life of editing Calvin.
Yeah, editing Calvin struggles, especially with all the times that I lose my trail of thought, and editing Calvin has to deal with that. What a poor guy. We should get him a cake or something.
You should. I mean, the pauses aren't too bad because I could just be like, oh, the audio picks back up here. Let me just edit that, cut that out. But editing Calvin will still take a cake. He won't say no.
Nice. So yeah, I think this was the right decision, not only because you'd have been upset with thinking I could have done better, but I think your listeners will also be able to get more out of, oh, this is a cool idea, but actually don't throw everything at once to show how cool something is, because it's going to make everything way too difficult, way too complicated, way too long, and really focus on the bits that you're trying to get home. I think that's a good message to take away, as well as all the other different areas that you've covered so far.
Yeah, that's what I hope people get out of this particular podcast episode. I do still want to put the recording out in some way. And now that we're doing this, I feel like I can be a little tighter on those edits as well. I can cut out more dead air and stuff. I mean, that's actually a whole other thing that might be worth talking about. It's just that it probably works as a video, or it might have worked as a stream, but audio alone for what we were doing, I don't think it would have worked, because we didn't describe... I feel like we didn't say a lot of things out loud enough. And I should have been on top of that, just because, I would know, this is supposed to be an audio thing. But that's just a matter of, making a habit of it later. Just really didn't think of it at the time.
Yeah, and I think having seen how the first podcast came out, where, you're talking, there's a brief thing of the map, and then, if we've rolled a particular number, you flash that up on screen. That's helpful for the narrative thing, but this was full combat. I think, being able to see the whole of the Foundry view probably would have been useful for players. But maybe that's not something for an editing, Calvin. Maybe that's a live stream sort of deal at some point.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think a live stream would have solved at least the visuals problem, because then it's not going to be audio only. People will see the map, they'll see the rolls.
Yeah, and they can sigh in desperation every time I roll a nat 1 in succession.
I don't know. Koskuru was doing okay.
Click not so much.
Yeah, fair. Actually, I'm really glad Koskuru turned out pretty well, at least roll-wise, because I did have some ideas for Koskuru that didn't really get to be brought out during the course of the game. That, I don't know, they might come up later, so I might just hang on to them. I do want to hang on to these characters. There was some decent stuff even in the end of the session, because at that point we just went into a very quick skill thing. Everybody just make this skill roll to sort of get rid of this creature instead of going into a whole other combat. One of those things included Cass and Darlia drawing on the natural magic of both the Verduran Forest and the bulwarks of Castrovel to help shut down the portal after Eklek and Koskuru do some massive damage to this avatar. And I liked that. I would like to bring Cass and Darlia back and just, figure out where those two NPCs could end up and what that might mean for a future game.
Oh, that would be sweet.
Yeah, I don't know. Again, there is still some, there was some good stuff in here. There's some good ideas in here, and I'm trying not, I don't want to let it rattle me too much, because I knew what to fix about it and what was good and what to learn from it. The idea of just showing it raw to other people, though, and people only seeing the result and not what I took from it was a little daunting, but nah, there's some good NPCs here, there's some good character ideas here, there's a whole multiversal fungal villain here that I would like to use for other things. Because my celiacs does not have to stay necessarily within these two particular systems either.
Oh no, he's coming for the cowboy dimension. Run, folks. Grab your hats and your yee-haws and run.
He could be. He could show up there. He could show up anywhere. Also, I don't know that I mentioned this previously. I think I might have brought it up slightly, but the token art I really liked. A lot of it was from the JPEG tokens, which I'm slightly tempted to pay for. If they sponsor us, though, then... But yeah, I think in general, there was a lot of stuff that I liked here. Some stuff that didn't turn out so well. I know why it didn't, and that at least makes me feel better about putting out the actual episode, which will be a YouTube thing. I'm not going to try to edit that for Spotify, but I'm going to try to cut it down as much as I can and try to get that out, within a reasonable amount of time.
Yeah, don't like sweat it too much, and give people time to listen to this podcast before going into, seeing how it played through in practice, and then it kind of sets the expectations.
Yeah, I think that'll be helpful for me, and I think it'll be helpful for people too, as they're watching it. Because, I don't know how entertaining it would be to watch in that last half. So at least if people have some context for it, then that might be useful.
Yeah.
But that's about it. Like, again, I would like to do more Pathfinder, Starfinder stuff. I did have some ideas, but again, they were a lot just like, putting some element of one into the other instead of a direct blend of the two. Because I couldn't figure out how to make it work, and I was already settled on what I was doing when I thought of this. But I was kind of inspired by a comment that I had seen, and I was thinking of like some sort of Samurai Jack-esque thing, where some characters in the past get flung into the far future.
Oh, it's so funny. I was just thinking of Samurai Jack when you said that as well. That would be so cool, though.
Right?
Yeah.
Like, the same villain exists between the 2 points in time, but those past heroes in their fantasy classes, they wake up in the future and they have to deal with like far future stuff. It would kind of end up focusing on specific members of the party a lot, so there'd have to be some balancing in the story to make that work. But it's a cool idea.
Yeah, I guess you don't necessarily have to send the player characters into the future either. You can go like full Skyrim and have like the big bad get flung into the future. Guys, if that's a spoiler for Skyrim, the game's been out for like nearly 2 decades now. What are you doing?
It's on every system.
But yeah, Alduin gets sent through into the future to become a problem for future people, and you can have that, and maybe the people in the future need to look to the past to find out more about this new threat, and you could combine things that way as well.
Oh, what if you had the players playing a party in Pathfinder, and they deal with Alduin or some other threat, and the way it ends up with that villain waking up later in the Starfinder future, and the players play different characters.
Ooh, Calvin, we're gonna need a part 2, or like the sequel to this.
I think so. I think my celiac is gonna have to make a return, and I'm gonna have to come up with more titles.
My celiac returns and invades the tailor's shop, who is suddenly dismayed at how much drip he has.
Did have quite a lot of drip. Yeah, I'll show my celiac's token. I did borrow some art from one of the Pathfinder books. Imagine a fungus with remarkable drip. I don't know, see, like, now I'm excited. Before, I was like, oh, I'm so tired of listening to this. But now I'm like, no, I want to do more of this. I just want to do it better.
And you know exactly what it needs now to be able to do it the way you want it. So I'm excited as well to see how it goes, and hopefully be a part in it. And if not, then I hope whoever you invite on instead gets to enjoy it.
Oh, I think I had mentioned during the recording before, but I don't know if I could think of other people that I would rather have to do this sort of thing than you or Ramon.
Yay! I'm wanted.
Like, maybe with more experience I'll be better at it, but like, I need people who know the games and are good players, and that I know will be as much support as I need if I'm trying something new.
Yeah. We got you back, Calvin. It's all good.
Yeah, which I super appreciate. And I appreciate you coming on to do this episode, so I didn't have to, like, talk to empty air.
Hey, you're more than welcome, dude. And if anyone else is thinking about doing a crossover between, like, Pathfinder and Starfinder, what are you thinking of doing or excited to see? You know, I would love to hear what your ideas and plans are. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, drop them in comments below and let us know what you think. Because I know people are thinking about this. Like, we've seen it in our comments on the channel. It's all over the various Reddits for Pathfinder and Starfinder. Like, there's a bunch of good ideas out there. And I want to see people, execute on them. Because that is the thing I haven't seen. Like, I haven't seen, like, I've seen people talk about it, but I want to see people do it. I want to see what they do.
Yeah, I imagine that some people are going to be waiting until the official release before getting to grips with it, rather than using the playtest system and then, you know, maybe thinking, oh, I don't want to do it now because what if it changes and then I've got to rework it all. But good news for you folks, you don't have to wait long.
Yeah.
Starfinder 2E is coming out at the end of July, beginning of August, following on from Gen Con.
Yeah, I believe the PDF for the player core has a date of July 31st.
Yes, because it falls in line with the same date that it starts being played at Gen Con, if I've remembered correctly.
So, yeah, you can pre-order the print edition. The PDF will be out July 31st, sorry, which means we're not going to get to talk about it until the Wednesday after.
So that's right, folks. Don't listen elsewhere. Listen here to Calvin, even if it's a delayed response.
Just wait a week, please.
Come on, they don't have like the advertisers supporting the channel. You got to help them out, folks.
Yeah, please. Yeah, we're for sure gonna be on this game as soon as it's out. Obviously, very excited for this game, and maybe in the future with these new stats, we can do another actual play session. You know, and try to lean more into like the role play stuff, and try to keep the combats tight and focus on really cool characters if they happen. And yeah, I'm looking forward to this game. I want to see what comes out of it. I'm pretty sure the GM core is going to have the ship rules. I think they talked about that at FaizoCon, the narrative ship rules, and I want to see those because we haven't seen them yet. I want.
Yeah,
ships.
That's going to be really interesting.
So yeah, that. As soon as the book is out, I think that's probably going to be one of the major things we talk about when we go over the books. But I think that's about it. Is that about it? I don't really have anything else to say about this session. I think I covered all my thoughts on it.
No, I think that's about everything. So you know what you got to do now.
Oh yeah?
Got to head into the outro.
All right. Well, first off, for the outro, Tim, thanks again for coming on and hanging out and doing this episode with me. Yeah, I'm glad that you were able to at least have some amount of fun in the session, and I'm glad that you're able to, you know, give me the real talk for where things went wrong as well.
Hey, you're more than welcome, and you know, shout out to Ramon as well, who gave a lot of really good advice at the time, and I think that was really shaped a lot of what we've talked about today. Yeah.
Again, like there's a reason I wanted you two to be on there, because, you know, even if something goes wrong, I know you two will be able to communicate that and what the issue would be. So yeah, thanks again. Since Ramon is not here, I am going to make sure that I shout out to a couple of games he's working on. Mechanized Body, which is a card-based mech TTRPG. There'll be a link to it below and a link to the itch.io page where you can get the test rules for the game. Ramon and Trey are working on this game together, and if you want to get to some playtests, there is a Discord link as well. So you can join the Discord, join a playtest game. They've been working on it quite a bit, and I think they've got something really cool. It's a really cool setting. If you're a fan of Gundam 00, I think you'll see a lot of really interesting themes there. As well, Ramon is working on Versus, which is a fighting game-inspired tabletop RPG. We did a streamed playtest of that. Not streamed, it was just a video playtest of that like a week or two ago. So check that out as well. As far as this channel goes, we've got podcast episodes. Streams will hopefully be coming back soon. There should hopefully be some by the time you're listening to this episode. But we do have more podcast episodes. We have the previous one, the first part of this crossover session, as well as a bunch of stuff on Pathfinder and Starfinder and Lancer and Mutants and Masterminds. Speaking of which, the episode after this one, so on the 30th of July, that episode, we will have Alex Thomas on to talk about Mutants and Masterminds. Hopefully y'all saw the big news last week. There is a 4th edition of Mutants and Masterminds incoming. After the 3rd edition was released like 10 plus years ago, I think. But 4th edition was announced, and it'll be released during Gen Con next month. So that is another thing that we will have to cover on the channel. But yeah, we get into talking about that game, some details on it, some things that will be added and changed and refined and streamlined in the game. It's a really fun episode, and there was also another session of taking public domain supervillains and making an adventure around them.
I love it when you guys do that.
It's so much fun. So there's another one of those, and it's something to really look forward to. And I think we also talked about a bunch of USP stuff. Speaking of the Untold Stories project, there's a lot of one-shots going on there. There's City of Destiny, an ongoing Mutants and Masterminds campaign, so definitely check those out as well. I'm in some of the one-shots, and I'm also in the ongoing campaign playing a spider-based character who is a whole lot of fun to play.
A spider-based character.
A certain spider superhero who is maybe partially inspired by other spider-based superheroes, who knows?
And maybe not part of the license expired group.
Maybe. I actually did get her name from the public domain superhero page.
Oh, okay. Fair enough.
So she's her, it is a whole thing, but her aunt is the original Spider Queen, or at least has the same name as the original Spider Queen from the public domain superhero wiki, who, funny enough, was using web fluid before Spider-Man.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. She had like these bracelets that would shoot this web fluid out. So maybe Spider-Man took some inspiration from that.
Well, the more you know.
So yeah, if you want to see a character who is not that, but it's kind of close, then check out Untold Stories Project on Twitch and YouTube. And of course, if you're into the Lancer RPG, there's a bunch of Lancer writers and creators who are linked below, as well as other games like, we've talked about a whole ton of things. There's Soar, there's Dawn, there's Fathomless Gears. Everything that we've chatted about is all linked below. But I think that's it for the outro. Shouting out a lot of people. Tim, anything else you want to say before we head into the end of this episode?
Just say thanks again for having me. It's been a blast.
Yeah, I mean, it's always fun to have you on, and I'm sure you'll be back at some point, because I'm sure we'll bring you on here to talk about Starfinder.
Yeah.
All right. Well, for all our GMs and players out there who are trying to avoid the reach of multiversal fungi, just remember to keep on winning with dice, and we'll see you next time.
Bye, guys.